everyone. Welcome to another episode of Cryptocurrent. Your host here, Richard Carthon. And today I got a very special guest with me all the way out in Raleigh, North Carolina. He's working on a lot of amazing projects in blockchain. Today is going to be a very heavily blockchain-focused conversation. We have a thought leader that can speak to everything that's going on in it, can break it down very simply, but then also explain a lot of amazing projects that he has going. John Wolpert, how are you doing today?
Hey, Richard. It's good to see you. Thanks for having me on.
Of course. Appreciate you joining us today. You know, before we get started, how about you give us a little bit of background about yourself?
I've been in and out of technology for a lot of years. Had 2 or 3 startups, nonprofit overseas once, and was an IBMer 3 times. And my journey on blockchain, I was working on Watson at IBM, so AI, and then I got the call to go and check out this blockchain thing. And we got lucky. It got big quickly. We built this thing called Hyperledger Fabric and IBM blockchain. And then I kind of had a kind of an epiphany. And Joe Lubin at that very moment called up and said, "Hey, you want to come start companies on the next internet?" And you just don't say no to that. In fact, my boss even said, "Yeah, you can't say no to that." And so I joined ConsenSys 3 years ago, a little more now. And then a year and a half ago, we embarked on this journey with Ernst & Young and Microsoft, and now hundreds of other people and companies on this thing called the Baseline Protocol.
Yeah, and I mean, amazing stuff that you're working on between everything that's going on with ConsenSys. I mean, ETH 2.0's recently coming out. We have, of course, Metamask, with a lot of people are very familiar with. Even with Baseline Protocol and having that open source that developers can come and build upon, you are really being an innovator and paving the way for a lot of people to come and join this movement and build technology for the future. But I just want to take a step back. You know, those first moments when you got to work on Watson, when you got to work on the very first Hyperledger and everything else like that, you know, what was that like, and how was it putting all of that together and building the team to actualize this vision of blockchain?
Well, it is the fun part of the process for me is somebody said, "Oh, you guys are pioneers," and I was like, "No, we're not pioneers. We're scouts, right? We're the pioneers are the ones you're going to name the towns after, and the settlers and but the scouts usually we go off into the mountains and get eaten by a bear and forgotten by history. So that's a certain kind of person. I'm definitely that person. I've been that way for 30 years of my career. I like that fuzzy front end where you don't know what you don't, mostly that you don't know anything. And you're Lewis and Clark in it through the wilderness. You don't know what's in front of you. And it takes a degree, it is exhausting. And it's some of the best people I know that do that. They do it once or twice. I just keep doing it over and over again.
Yeah.
And usually, I'll hang out in the saloon in the pioneer town for a while, but then the settlers show up with the churches and the courthouses, and I'm out of there.
You're like, on to the next one, right?
Yeah, gotta go Grizzly Adams again. So.
Well, on that, can you kind of, our show is a large range of audience, and some of the people that listen are first timers. Can you, at its core, explain what is blockchain and how is it that you're building upon blockchain so other technology or other companies can build on top of it?
Well, let me preface that by saying I'm an odd kind of scout, as it were. There are more scouty scouts than I was and am. Paul Brody, for example, was on this Ethereum thing before I was by a year at least, and he was at IBM. Got eaten by the bear, and fortunately got resurrected at Ernst & Young. But he said blockchain like exactly 4 months too soon. And by the time I was saying blockchain, and my boss Jerry Cuomo was saying it, the CEO of IBM was saying it, so it was okay. We were laying that foundation. He was out there before there wasn't even a trail, and he fell in a bear pit, and that was the end. So timing is everything. But it's fair to say that I'm not the vanguard of the scouts. There are others who are that way. People like Vitalik and Joe and folks before them with Bitcoin itself. So it's all a progression. And yeah, so I think that's an important way to think about it. Is that we're all sort of early, but there are some that are earlier than that. And we're all kind of living on each other's ideas.
Right. You're putting the building blocks. You're doing those next steps, and you're building and refining so that it's easier for the next lot, right? As you keep scouting. But you said you started in IBM, and then you had the opportunity of a lifetime with ConsenSys and being able to go in that direction. What was it like to be one of the first ones in to like pave the way to what is ultimately shaping the crypto community in a lot of ways of what's being built upon the blockchain, with a lot of things that are being built upon it?
Right. So that's another kind of weird thing about the scouting I do, is that it's in a way I'm a weirdly conservative scout, and that's not to say politically, but just in terms of my idea about innovation. In some way, there was I don't remember who said it, but I think it was Henry Chesbrough at UC Berkeley said, if you're going to write a book or if you're going to do something important, you got to pick a fight. And he's a very peaceful guy. So he wasn't saying go out and duke it out with somebody. He was saying, you've got to have an argument. You got to take a counterpoint to something somebody is saying. And even when that, especially in fact, when people that are really smart are saying something. So, Mark Andreessen was saying that the cryptocurrency and that Bitcoin was the way to go. And we said, let's try Fabric, right? And then, my own team was saying, hey, Fabric and private blockchains. And I said, there's some reasons why I don't like that. It looks like a fancy, expensive, and complicated database to me. So why don't we just use less expensive, less complicated, more secure database if we're going to do that? So that was kind of, in a way, that's kind of my shtick, is saying, hey, I built this thing and you shouldn't use it, right? Or you should know what you're using when you're using it, right? With private blockchains, I think are better referred to as respectfully as shared databases. And there's nothing wrong with a shared database. It's just you should know that that's what you're getting into. Right. A database means that there are other people and other companies you do not control, who have a full copy or encrypted or otherwise. They have a whole lot of information, that both data and metadata, that comes from inside your company, and you should better be really okay with that. Right.
That level of transparency and being able to really have an entire look under the hood. Yeah. You want to have that look under the. So there's a lot of reasons why you want transparency. But you just said that was an interesting thing you just said. Transparency is an interesting problem, or it's an interesting solution to a problem. I've been saying this a lot this week. I don't know why, but somebody got me thinking about this old line that says, "It's not so." What your customers want is never so important as why they want it. And so why do people say, I want transparency? I don't think they want transparency. I think they don't want to be surprised. Right. I like that. If you leap to transparency, then you're going to be like, well, okay, I just took my data to Burning Man, right? I am getting a sunburn naked with my data at Burning Man. Is that really the solution I wanted? Or did I create new problems? I've lost compartmentalization. I've lost the ability to say, hey, especially in the age of AI, right? Coming from Watson, it strikes me that and I have a lot of friends who are, Google with TensorFlow and all that stuff. It worries me how much you can triangulate on knowing something about somebody that you shouldn't know without having the actual data, or at least all of it, right? And there's so much exogenous data outside of that blockchain that you're going to be able to triangulate on people. And certainly the Silk Road guys figured that out, right? Or discovered what happens when you disregard that, right? So figuring out and triangulating, it's not so much about whether you encrypt the data. It's that all these breadcrumbs we leave behind us in our activities between our counterparties and ourselves. There's a lot of legitimate activity that you don't necessarily want to be naked in front of your competitors, right? Or at least and there are some folks I respect who have a point of view that says even that ought to be completely transparent. We should just basically not have any more secrets. I watched Sneakers. I liked the movie. It was a good movie back in the day. but as a practical matter, I think we're a long ways from certainly established companies and even startups who have to handle serious things like grandma's pension or something, being okay with being completely transparent. So what we want is more assurance. We want to be
certain that we're not having shenanigans happen. We don't want to be surprised by something way up a supply chain that, outside of our visibility might cause the steaks that I ordered as a restaurant not to show up on time for the thing that I needed them to show up for, right? Those are the kinds of things that we want transparency over. We want to make sure that if we don't want to be surprised that the radishes that we just got shipped to us have been contaminated in some way, right? Those are the things that we don't want. So we want to worry less, we want to save time, and we want to not be distracted from whatever our mission is. I don't think that transparency is necessarily you have to be thoughtful about what solutions you apply to a problem. There's another, I don't want to sound pithy, but there was an old investor I had who used to say, we're not interested in whether or not you have a solution to a problem. We're only going to invest if we think you have an authentic story about a problem, because we figure your first solution to it will be wrong anyway. And when that's wrong, we want to know that you're going to go up to bat and try again because you're passionate about the problem.
Right.
Right.
No, that's cool. And I want to stay on that for a second. Right. So, you're bringing up a lot of really good ideas and things that I've spoken with other people, like on a deeper level of, again, going to the core of problems or the core of the underlying issues that are trying to be resolved with technology. So data is a big thing right now. Of course, everything that's going on with Facebook, with some others, even Apple, just going and saying like, "Hey, we're going to protect your data. We're going to do whatever." Like data and the safety around it is a large talking point. And blockchain, in a lot of ways, tries to help solve it, but might go too far, just like you said. So, do you think that in a lot of ways that blockchain is perpetually going to potentially cause more problems than it originally sought to solve? Or do you think that ultimately it is arbitrarily good, but we need to put more protocols in place to refine it?
That's a great question. I think what it makes me think about is that, blockchain is an invention, right? Or a set of inventions. A lot of the inventions in that pattern of inventions are pretty old things, right? Hashes and other things. It was a novel construction of some things that existed already, a couple of things that were kind of new. But what was really powerful and novel about blockchain in the very first instance in 2008, right, it wasn't the invention, it was the intention. It was the intention of some people in how they intended to use a set of things in a certain way to do a certain thing, right? They wanted to, it was 2008, right? Nobody had faith in the financial institutions of the world anymore. We're like, hey, why don't we blow that up, and change it? Let's do something different. We intend to do something different. The power behind blockchain is not the inventions so much as the intentions. Not to discard the inventions. Some of them are powerful. The math behind some of this stuff is really good math and really cool. But it's kind of like saying, well, I've got a pencil here. I can patent the pencil. I can show it to you. I can write something boring with it, or I can shove it in your eye. And now it's a disruptive technology, right? So I think, that's an interesting way of looking, I think, at this stuff. You asked the question that was on everybody's minds: will blockchain ever be useful beyond the thing that most people are excited about with the cryptocurrency stuff, which I have no story about. I mean, I'm from Michigan. I'm a terrible gambler. I'm not good at that stuff. I got to be in finance. I don't have a mind for cryptocurrencies, and I have like homeopathic amounts of the stuff. So, I mean, it's not even interesting. People are like, anybody interested in what I have to say about cryptocurrencies is going to definitely lose money. So, beyond that, though, the question is, what is its utility? And it comes back to that intention of use. If you intend to use it as a fancy database, I think that there will always, what makes blockchain technology good at some things, makes it bad at being a database for stuff. It's slow, will always be slower than a comparable system machine or state machine for of similar specifications, simply because now you're adding a consensus layer on that. So no matter how fast you get things going, it will always be slower than a non-consensus based state machine. So if you can get away with, if you don't need if you don't need that overhead, don't use that overhead. Use something else like Mongo or Neo4j if you like graph databases, or any other thing than a blockchain, private or public. In fact, if you're thinking private blockchain, you should probably start thinking distributed database, Cassandra or something like that.
Okay.
Right? Couch or Cloudant. Then you've got good crash fault tolerance, you've got performance, you've got all sorts of good things, and you have a degree of compartmentalization you really have a hard time doing with anything that's worthy of calling itself a blockchain. Now, if you're going to, so that sounds pretty bleak for blockchain, but I'm going to turn that around and say, well, kind of like a Shakespeare comedies, right? They start bleak and they go positive. Tragedies start positive, go bleak. So let's go positive, right? So the positive thing is, but you could use it, right? But it won't work, but it will work if you think of it as, and then this is the foundation of the baseline approach, you think of it as middleware. You say, look, we're not going to put data on it. So per se, we're going to put hashes or effectively proofs of something. And in this case, we're going to, the thing that we're going to put proofs about are not, you might have heard of the phrase proof of existence, right? So I'm going to take a hash of something and prove that this thing that I produced for you is the original article because no bits are different, right? Than what generated the hash. Cool. That's a pretty nice invention. As I recall, it was as late as the early 70s, I think, or 60s, certainly. People didn't think that was possible. So, I mean, that's a really great invention, hashing. And Merkle trees are cool. The question then, but proof of existence is only kind of, it has one value. Proof of consistency is where baseline goes. It says, hey, I've got a traditional database over here with a record on it, purchase order. And you've got a database over, you're my trading partner, you're my supplier. And I need to know that the purchase order in your Microsoft Dynamics system and the purchase order in my SAP system are verifiably the same purchase order. Nobody fat-fingered an extra zero. Nobody has printed off a fax or even a DocuSign PDF is still just a signed electronic piece of paper unless you add business logic and actual field level data, which DocuSign is actually doing and really moving forward quickly on that. So now you have this signature that says, yes, everybody signed this agreement and this agreement has data. Now we can say there's this permanent, always on supremely tamper resistant state machine that can't lock you out of valid operations called the public blockchain. And it now has a thing on it that says, you and I can't tell each other that one of us didn't get the memo or that we got the wrong data. We know, at least when we agreed, that we have exactly the same thing.
Right.
And if you get clever with that, you can use that same proof as a key and a key value lookup. So you can start to do interesting things with workflows. You can say, well, this purchase order follows from this baselined master service agreement with a discount table in it. And each purchase order that wants to claim that it's part of that master service agreement and get its proof on the blockchain has to observe the rules that were written into that original work step. So it gets pretty interesting from there, but it's kind of boring stuff where you're just using the public blockchain as a bulletin board for a Merkle tree full of proofs. And we're doing it in such a way under zero knowledge so that anybody observing that public blockchain, and anybody can observe it because it's public, would see nothing. You wouldn't be able to tell that we even had a secret. So if ZK snarks is, I have a secret, I'm going to prove to you that I have a secret without telling you the secret. This is, we have a secret, and we're going to use this machine over here to make sure that we have the same secret without telling it what the secret is, and without letting anybody that's looking at it know that we even have one.
That's interesting. So just so I can pull it all together. So blockchain as a whole, there are some things that it doesn't make sense necessarily for all industries. or it's just a more expensive, slow database protocol. Whereas for some use cases, if speed and all that doesn't really matter, but you just need the access to the data, you need to make sure that's always there, that it's always available, then it has a ton of use cases. So what you're doing currently with Baseline Protocol, it sounds like you're creating that easy accessible blockchain that you can quickly go and make sure that everything's validated, kind of like your DocuSign example that you were using, to where like, hey, we're both agreeing that we signed this thing, or this data saying XYZ, and it's timestamped, and like we can, now that it lives on this bulletin board, we always can reference it back. So for me, what that sounds like,
the only word I would change is it's not quick. And it doesn't need to be. It doesn't need to be particularly quick. I mean, it's quick. And ETH2, it's getting quick enough. And you can do some fancy batching with what a lot of people call layer 2, but really just can be a server that is set up in such a way that it can't play shenanigans, and it's just kind of filling up the plane with some proofs and then dropping the root of that onto the mainnet, yada yada. So, and in our case, that's all you. That's pretty good, right? Layer 2 really works for baselining, because we're not trying to do any token trading or anything. We're not trying to. We don't have to do things like reconcile, burning or getting back your money or any of that stuff. All we're doing is placing these unintelligible trees of nonsense onto a intermediate thing, and then landing it on the mainnet every hour, 10 minutes.
Well, let me ask you about this. So, I mean, one of the first use cases that instantly goes to my mind is voting. Like a thing is, as far as like being able to cast ballots and be able to be like, oh, did this person do this with this ballots with all this information and send it to a place, and like, yep, this person did it, whatever, is a great way to do it. Or another thing that comes to my mind is when the stimulus package went out in the United States, and we needed to quickly be able to say like, hey, we're trying to send you this money to a specific wallet. Are you who you say you are? Is this all information? Have you paid your taxes? Whatever it is. Yep. You checked all these boxes. Here you go. And then you can quickly verify it. I mean, are those kind of use cases that it could be used for? Like, what are some different ways that you see it, like from a practical standpoint, being used either in the world today?
Yeah. Okay. So you just identified several intentions, right? So I intend to be able to get to make voting suck less, and I want to. Interestingly, and there's a great video. I don't remember, English guy. I can't remember the name, but there's a great YouTube video out there about a guy that will take apart why it's a terrible idea to do voting electronically, right? You always want to have that paper backup. And it really comes down to it comes down to a problem of layering, right? Layers upon layers upon layers upon layers means that and something as consequential as a U.S. presidential election, there's so much incentive and there's so many opportunities, right down to side channel attacks and stuff, way down in the depths of the layering. And so that's what makes, unless you're writing, literally having people that can write in ones and zeros, it's tricky. And even then, if you're writing in ones and zeros, you still have the machine layer below that. So that's what makes voting tricky. Maybe somebody will figure that out, right? Maybe quantum computing, I don't know. And there's always a way, right? But that's one intention. The other intention you mentioned is an interesting one. To me, it comes down to more of an abstract thing. I remember in the 90s, it was everybody needed a web page, and then everybody needed to be able to put their catalog of stuff on the web page. And then in between that, they needed a spinning logo on the web page. I remember that was a big thing. And then after you could have a catalog, you wanted to be able to sell, let people click and buy, right? And give you money. And now you have e-commerce. It didn't matter what kind of business you were in, what vertical industry you were in. Everybody started wanting to click to buy, click to observe e-commerce. And so you had this kind of very specific set of things. What was that line? A very specific set of skills that everybody wanted more or less the same way, right? So you could write web servers, and you could write e-commerce platforms. But at the end of the day, you could apply that to anything. So it was specific. When you're writing a story, you want to find the story's, what is the unity of the story? The unity of the story could be one day in the, so like that show 24 hours. And the unity of the story was that 24 hours of time. There's a play, a Broadway play called the Long Christmas Dinner, which is over 100 years, but it's all at one table, one family table. And that's the unity of that story, right? So you can have vertical unity, you can be a healthcare solution, or you can have horizontal unity like Slack, right? You're just very specific, you know what you do, you can do it for anybody. For me, baselining is a horizontal specificity. It's saying we have a lot of problems with data inconsistency and workflow integrity. Anywhere where bad things happen because my database has something different than your database, and we think it's the same. We have, and we don't know because I can't look in your database and you can't look in mine. And by the way, you probably shouldn't look into mine, and your security officer is not going to let you look into mine, or mine isn't. How do we solve that problem, right? And can we solve it in such a way that we don't have to just go full Burning Man?
Yeah, I think that's a really interesting way to put it. And like when you really think about that, yeah, like databases aren't meant to talk to each other, and there's a lot of reasons why, right? One, the companies don't want to just, if there's sensitive data, you don't want to just get rid of it and share it openly with the world. But also, if you have like a secret sauce, you don't want someone to just be able to come and take it. But if you want data to align, you want to make sure that even if you're working together, if you're not, you just want to make sure that you have accurate data. There needs to be a way that the two databases talk without really revealing anything. And if that is what's being solved here, I mean, that is unique. That is like really cool. And it sounds like a really tough nut to crack, but it sounds like you're getting it done.
Yeah, I think it all comes down to this idea that somebody gave, I don't remember who, I actually do. It was, I used to work for a company called Strategos, and we had this phrase, but. Right. Yeah. Everybody says when you're doing innovation or ideation, they're saying, "Oh, there's no killer phrases. There's no bad ideas." No, there's terrible. There's lots of. I love bad ideas. Let's embrace the bad ideas. They're great bad ideas all over the place. And if you say, "Well, but that's a bad idea," but it wouldn't be if, and then somebody else can say, "But that's a bad idea for this reason," but it wouldn't be if. You do that 5 times, you could come up with some pretty remarkable stuff. By not ignoring the weak spots in the idea, but embracing them and then flipping them, right? So right. I think that's what we did with Baseline in really a good way. Is we said, here are the problems. Here are 10 reasons why a security officer at a company would not want to use blockchain, but they would if. And that's what you get here. You say, well, yeah, the data is not leaving your database. It's fine. Leave it where it is. But wouldn't you like it if your system could tell you that you're consistent on a record by record basis with your counterparty system without having to actually jack into them or create a new integration bus for every single partnership, which usually costs you $1 million every time you do it, right? So now we can say, no, we're not doing that anymore. At least for that particular function, that consistency machine, that's common frame of reference. We got this thing that's always on, it's always running, it has its own reasons for existing, and we're just going to use it as a bulletin board.
Yeah. I mean, that's really unique, and I think that's a really good way to butt. That is a really cool like brain strategy to think through some complex things that will come to solutions. A mentor of mine, his name's Salome Miller. He likes to say that you have to find a way to work the angles in like any situation you're in. You might be in a spot you don't necessarily want to be in, but if you can find a new angle, you can find a way to keep moving forward and working it in the direction that you want it to go. So. Man, I really do appreciate you coming and talking to us about everything that you're working on. And it's very interesting. And man, I tell you what, one of the ways that I really see this being practical is like, especially as you talk about the horizontal way that you're getting the blockchain to talk to each other. I've used this before. And if everyone that's listening, you've heard me say this, like, building bridges is one of the most powerful things that you can do. There's a lot of islands that are out there, and the people that find ways to build bridges to connect everything, those are the winners. And it sounds like that is something that y'all are trying to accomplish here. So I do appreciate that. And, as we wrap up here, I just wanted to say, what is a final thought that you want to leave with all of our listeners today?
Well, I think you put your finger on it. We're going into a world of hyperconnectivity. We're going into a world where maybe we got the method wrong, but for one reason or another, the word blockchain has prompted a lot of companies, a lot of decision makers to small and large, right? We're not just talking about big giant companies, not enterprise. I don't really get what enterprise means. I mean, if you're a 3-person startup dealing with grandma's pension, you've got as many problems as a big, as a bank in terms of security and GDPR and, the new California law, all these things, right? You've got compliance and for good reasons. This is, we just don't throw that out, right? It's not like, was that one guy that used to say, I break things to fix them. I'm like, no, you should really understand what you're replacing or you're just going to be destined to be it. That's the best you can do, right? If you don't understand. And so I think that it's important to say, okay, well, we're going to get closer together. It's great that this word blockchain has prompted everybody to say that we need to collaborate more. And how do we, and I had a boss many years ago that was my whole job, was to figure out, he said, I think that there's these other companies and our company could work together on these things, but there are things in our company I don't even know about. And the only way to know that we should work together is to already know that we should work together. And there's just really good reasons why we don't want to throw open all of our R&D to each other before we know that. So how do you solve that problem? In fact, the way we solved that at the time was we created a non-government-backed NGO that hired polymaths and put them in the bench level research labs of all these different companies. And they could tell each other everything that they were seeing on the condition they never told the companies they were working in. Right. And think about that. It kind of bakes your onion for a minute. And it generated billions of dollars, or I think $500 million the last time I checked with them, in just new deal flow between companies that they never would have thought to work together ever. Right. Material science company and a pharma, that kind of thing. Wow. And so we have to work together, but we can't just throw open the doors all the time to everybody. There's just real reasons why we can't do that. So how do you get both without? And the only way you can solve a conundrum like that is through true innovation, which means you're looking at it. You're looking at a problem, and you got to turn it this way, right? You've got to completely change the problem. You can't solve it within its own structure. You have to change the structure. Right. I think that's what we're doing.
No, that's great. And I like that final thought. And just like you said, and for everyone that's listening, we're recording this so you can watch it on YouTube as well. And he did a visual to where he literally had his hand palm forward, and then he turned it to the side to show you the visual of analyzing a problem. And it's if you change the angle just a little bit, now you have a new problem, you have a new lens, you have a new framework to now attack it. And so I think that's a great visual. I think that's a great way to analyze this. And, I think that's a really cool way to put a bow on this and, for you to explain, baseline protocols. So appreciate you joining us today. What are some ways that people can learn more about you and learn more about what you got going on with baseline protocol?
Thanks for asking, Richard. I should say we just today, about 12 hours ago, I think, we started the baseline protocol Gitcoin hackathon. You can go to Gitcoin. You can go to baseline-protocol.org. I don't know that the hackathon is out on the website yet, but you can get the Slack inviter and get on our Slack channel, which has like 840 people on it now. And they're very, very friendly community. This is, I don't think I mentioned, but Baseline Protocol is an openly governed, open standard, and it's actually public domain. It's not even an open source. It's public domain. So it's not like an Apache license. It's a full public domain license. And to all the work that we're doing there. And you could just use it and start baselining your own products or your own solutions. But you can also come in and contribute to the work. And the folks that are paying attention to Baseline are good people to be paying attention to you. So for folks that are talented out there that are builders or makers, developers, engineers, architects, come on in, friendly crowd, very embracing of new people. There's some wonderful people that just found us on YouTube and now are leading whole chunks of this thing. So they can get involved, and you can win $10,000 right now between now and January 6th, across 7 projects that are on the Gitcoin hackathon that's running right now. So I think there's several projects that are $2,000 bounties, several that are $1,000 bounties.
Awesome. Well, thank you for letting everyone know about that. Thank you for all the knowledge that you dropped with us today. And John, really appreciate you being with us. And of course, for everyone listening, stay cryptocurrent. Hey, cryptocurrent crew, you asked and we delivered. We have received multiple requests for access to cool crypto and blockchain projects that you could use immediately. Well, we have recently launched our partnerships page. If you go to our website and go to the partnerships tab, you'll be able to see multiple companies that have partnered with us to not only give you access to the cool products that they have to offer, but then also give you cool discounts to get started today. So please go to our website, go to the partnerships tab, and check out the various partners that we have today. Hey everyone, I hope you enjoyed today's episode. For more information on today's episode and all of our episodes, please visit us at www.crypto-current.co. You can also find a link in the show notes. Want to stay up to date in the latest news in cryptocurrency? Sign up for our newsletter today. You'll receive daily emails Monday through Friday that are personalized and curated content specific to you and your interest, powered by artificial intelligence. You can either go to our show notes or go to our website to sign up today. Are you an accredited investor looking to invest in cryptocurrency? Crescent City Capital can help. Go to crescentcitycapital.com for more information. I don't know if you've noticed, but the quality of our podcast each week are improving. I can only thank my amazing producer, Andrew DeRitter with DeRitter Productions, who has been putting all of this together. If you have any podcast, music, or audio needs, please go to DeRitterProductions.com. That's DERITTER Productions.com.
Thanks for tuning in to another episode of Cryptocurrent with Richard Carthon. We'll be back with more exciting developments from the world of blockchain and cryptocurrency next week. But until then, stay cryptocurrent.